comment below and let's talk about that. Okay, we are back. Autodesk Flame Beginners tutorial series. We're going to do a little touch on some audio here. If you haven't checked out the other parts of this series, here's a quick little overview. We've been going over and creating this scene, tracking through the forest. We've been tracking points on trees. Transitions are utilizing cameras and lights and all sorts of stuff within action. Did this little push transition right there. We're gonna have a brief little go through of the audio features within Autodesk Flame. So I'm a mixer and stuff. I kind of been doing that for a little while. So mixing in Flame is definitely quite a bit different than other softwares or hardware. It's set up quite similar, but it's set up a little different also. So let's just kind of jump on into it and check this out. I'm gonna mute my music track so the YouTube guys don't nab me. Let's just mark an in and marking out. And if you guys haven't seen this already, but there are sound effects, download down in links below. If you need some sound effects, go ahead and go grab those. You can lay them into your timeline and you can follow along here, or you can just pull up your own sound effects or whatever and kind of do these same little tools and tricks that we're walking through right now. So if you go on over to options, we're going to choose show audio desk. You can also show overlays. There's all sorts of little show options, show scopes, viewing settings, markers, and stuff. We're going to do Autodesk right here. So here are our individual tracks. We can take a look here and see the levels. There we go. And this is our master metering, master fader metering. There actually isn't a master fader in here. So there's no way of actually treating and tracking that actual master output right there. So that's kind of one of the differences between Autodesk Flame and, you definitely wouldn't want to normally do a mix in Flame, but it does have the tools, and that's the purpose of this video, to be able to show you what those tools are. So we have our master output here. We have our individual metering here. We have basically a master EQ section right here. So this is corresponding with each of our tracks. So track 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so going over the EQ section, we have our high section, our mid section, and low section. The high section is going to adjust just your highs. So this is going to be your frequency, and then this is going to be your gain of the highs. So let's take a listen to that real quick. So I'm going to reset these. This is how the sound effects sound. So we're going to go ahead and mute this one and just focus on this sound effect right here. So I'm going to mark in, I'm going to mark out right here. Then I'm going to hold down both on this little play indicator, choose in and out, and then choose loop. So now it's just going to loop on this section here. So our highs are just going to obviously adjust the high end, so the treble of the sound. So there's adjusting the highs. So that's okay. So you can obviously hear the treble of that just increases. This is going to be a parametric EQ section, so you can kind of fine tune a certain frequency within there. So let's go ahead and find our Q, which is going to be the curve of the sound. So you can either make that curve really wide or you can make it really small. So the wider it is, the bigger number is the wider, the smaller number, the smaller, the tighter that is going to be. So we can dial in, let's say 2K and hit play on this. So now we have a nice tight EQ. So I can pull a lot of that out. And that makes it obviously a little bit more muffled. I can widen that Q and it's going to make it even more muffled. Actually, it looks like it's working the opposite way. So it's going to be a tighter Q is the bigger number, and then the wider Q is the smaller number. So that's how the EQ section works. We're going to go ahead and just increase the low end, the bass of it. So there's the bass just being bumped up. The next thing to this little area over here is the EQ desk. You can also choose the auxiliary desk. And this is going to be your different effects. So you can have chorus or flanger or phaser for the modulation. The delay is a delay, which is the echo of things. The reverb is more like of a sound of a room. So if we want to apply any of those, it's a master send from the effect to these actual areas. So if we want to do that, we'll just select our We'll select our sound effect, we'll choose our effect, and then we can go to reverb send. So now this input here is going to be sending to this reverb. So you can hear it there. So 0 is still sending it. So if you want to have just a little bit, that's none right there. A little bit would be just these actual quite low numbers. And then if you want to send a lot, then you just go into the plus numbers. So that's sending it on over to this reverb. If you want to tweak in the sound of that room that it's going into, the pre-delay is going to be the first reflection that the sound bounces off of. The decay rate is going to be how much time it takes for that sound reverb to trail off. Then you have a high cut, so you can EQ within this reverb, which is actually kind of a cool feature. So you can EQ all the high end out so it's not so sibilancy. Sibilance. The dampening, I'm not too sure how to explain dampening. Diffusion is going to be just kind of knocking down the reflections within the reverb. Then you have an output gain. You can also turn up the reverb if you need it to be louder, which doesn't really happen a whole lot, but for certain effects, it's pretty cool. Okay, so there's the reverb send. We're going to take that on off. Now we're going to apply a compressor and just kind of walk through how a compressor works. So go back into our little loop. So the compressor is going to be knocking down those high-end sounds and just kind of limiting in this sound effect. We have a threshold, which actually brings it down to when the compressor starts kicking in. So if we bring it down way low, it's going to be knocking down right away. Quite a bit higher, it's just knocking down a little bit later on the sound. So if you think of the sound in the reference of time, the threshold is going to be taking the sound, and with a very low threshold, it's hitting the sound on frame 0, frame 1. And then the higher threshold, it would be knocking the sound back on like frame 60. It's like a huge number there. It's not quite that long in time, but that kind of gives you a little reference of how the threshold works. The ratio is how much is actually knocking it back. So the 4, and we can slam it hard. And like a 20 ratio, 20-to-1 ratio would be more like limiting. So limiting is taking that sound and just kind of making sure it doesn't go any louder than a certain level, making sure you don't peak. The knee is going to be adjusting how much of or how quick that is going to be being affected. So the knee kind of can round off to how much it's going into that ratio and how hard the effector is working. The compressor is working. So the knee helps with how hard and how quick it's gonna hit. And then the output gain is exactly that. If you need to be louder or quieter because your master fader is peaking or something, you can bring that down. The compression really helps with limiting the sounds hitting that master so you're not clipping on sounds. That's kind of the purpose of a compressor. One of the purposes. You can also manipulate the sound of sounds. I don't know if that really makes any sense, but like, so you have like really low end or low quiet pieces of the sound. A compressor will bring those quiet pieces up more up front in the mix, so it's actually more intelligible to hear those really quiet pieces. So it actually changes the way sounds are heard. Let's drag that compressor off of there, and we'll kind of go over the other things. So we have a gate here. That's just going to turn sounds on and off in essence. EQ is much like that other EQ section. A de-esser is something that you use in like vocals quite a bit. I've never needed to use it in video. Reverb send, delay send, modulation send, and the gain. So the gain obviously is how you can turn the sound effect up and down, or music or whatever you need to do. And that you can do also on the timeline here. Just if you zoom into your effect. So if you zoom into the effects, then you can see this little waveform, this little line here, that little black guy. And you can increase them, decrease them right on the actual timeline instead of going over to the gain. The gain is a little bit more easier to kind of get more fine-tuned. So that's kind of the ins and outs of audio in Autodesk Flame. Go ahead and check out that subscription button. Click the bell if you want to get notified on the many videos that we're going to be putting up here. While we're here, check out my band, Fade to Black. Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, everything else.